It's time for another class, and I'm assuming you've already done your roll down to push up, you've done your warm up when you're in a standing position and your spine stretch, and of course you're going to be listening to your body as you should always with our exercises. We're going to start with all fours swimming today, and I'm going to hop into the all fours position. And just a reminder, sometimes it's more comfortable for some people to be on their fists, their knuckles, as opposed to being on their hands. It's completely up to you. You can do the exercise either way. It is a little bit harder stability-wise on your knuckles though. So let's find our neutral pelvis. And I'm going to start initially simply by sliding the leg back, focusing on staying still, and then I'll slide back in. And I'll make another parallel groove in the sand with the other leg, and then I'll slide in. And then if I'm feeling good, I'll add the opposite arm. So take your time. You can do the lift, you can hold it here. And all of these can actually be done with your eyes closed as well. So just being aware that your hips are staying level, your shoulders are staying level, you're not locking out the elbows, you're trying not to move into lumbar extension, you're trying to keep that natural curve of your lower back. You do need to draw that Easter egg muscle, the belly button in, just a little bit stronger whenever you're in this prone position. Just one more. And I'm going to go into the straight arm leg pull prone. So I'm going to curl the toes under. I'm going to straighten out one leg, softness at the knees, and then the second leg. I'm going to hold it here, maybe just for an in-breath, and then I'm going to come back in. One leg, then the second. Each leg is moving one at a time on the out breath. Nothing's happening on the in-breath, and the legs again moving on the next out breath. Take your time. Elbows are soft, knees are soft. We'll have a little child's pose stretch. You can, of course, hold it out there for much, much longer. You can hold it out there for several in and out breaths like you were doing the normal Sphinx. We're going to come into our prone swimming next. So we're face down. Draw those hips slightly up towards your ribs. Draw your belly button away from the mat. I'm going to engage my left glute max. And I'm going to stretch and lift that leg away. Relax it down. Engage my right glute max. And then stretch and lift that leg away. Take your time. Listening to your body, being aware if you're rolling your hips. I've got my fingertips touching my hip bones to allow me to know if I'm rolling left or right. I can also use my hands to check on that engagement of my gluteus maximus. It's like filling a balloon, inflate, and then you stretch and lift the leg. You should be nice and relaxed through your upper body. And I'm just going to, again, maybe have a little child pose stretch, and we're going to move into a couple of exercises on our side. I'm just going to move my mat back a little bit, so you can see me demonstrating a little bit better. We're going to start off with the side bend. I call it the right angle triangle. It's the thread the needle version. So let's get our right angle triangle, base of the triangle, the right angle. Spine is the hypotenuse, so try not to be banana shaped with the spine, with the hips resting on the floor. We're going to push those hips towards our heels, or another way of thinking about it is lifting up the rib cage, nice and proud. We've got that natural curve of our lower back. We'll bring the arm up to lightning rod, and we'll lift up and then thread as I look over my shoulder and thread underneath the armpit. I can keep my hips high, or I could return my hips to the mat each time I come back to lightning rod. It's completely up to you and whatever your body is telling you. Breathing out, breathing in. You can have a little bit of a breather and then continue again. Enjoying that lovely rotation through your spinal column. We're going to come down onto the mat and we're going to do our pure clams. This leg on the floor is in a pretty much a straight line with the body. I'm going to roll the leg forward. My hip is slightly rolled forward. It's just going to stay in that position. I'm going to work through those back pocket muscles as I pivot on the inside of the ball of my big toe and the inside of my heel. After I've done a few of those, just change the foot and the knee position around, but don't change your hips or shoulder position. Again, you might change it again. And you might do 2, 3, half a dozen in one position before you move on to the next position. It's completely up to you. Spend a little bit more time in those positions which it feels a little bit harder to do. So a group of 6 muscles, our deep lateral rotators, and depending on the angle of your thigh bone meeting the pelvis, it will determine which fibers of those muscles are more suitable for use. So we're just trying to get into as many of those fibers as possible. I can already feel it working here through the back pocket muscles. There's a couple of other little muscles that will assist as well. But predominantly, it is the back pocket muscles, the deep lateral rotators. And when you have finished doing that, we are going to roll onto our back. No, we're not, I lie. We're going to go face down again and finish off our prone swimming with our Supermans. I forgot that we're doing a lot of swimming today. So Supermans, pretty much the same as what we're just doing a moment ago, but this time we've got the opposite arm. Hands are wider than my shoulders. And I'm also going to extend through the crown of my head. Now you don't have to do this. You could leave your forehead and your nose just resting on the floor. But I'm stretching out opposite arm, opposite leg, and through the crown of the head. So I'm trying to keep my hips and my shoulders nice and square to the floor. Be aware if there is any rotation. And try to minimize it as much as you are able. You're on the rack, you're being stretched out, opposite arm and leg, and through the crown of the head. So just 1 or 2 more of those. You can also do the paddling one, which you'll really notice a lot more through that lower back. So I'm going to extend with one arm and leg, and then as they come towards the floor, the other one will lift up. And I can do this slower or faster. Little child's pose. And then we're going to roll over to the other side and do our thread the needle of our right angle triangle. So always looking to get our alignment, ABCs, alignment, breathing, centering. We're breathing to the base of the rib cage. If you've done the warm-up sequence prior to doing this class with me right now, then you would already have known that. We're going to bring the arm up to lightning rod, and I'm going to thread the needle. Get the alignment. Shoulder stays down. Obviously, there are the straight-legged variations, which I wasn't demonstrating today, but hopefully you remember them. And pure clams on this side as well. And then we'll enjoy a pretzel stretch before we do a few exercises on our back. Still draw your belly button in towards your spine. Feel that feeling of space between the side of your waist and the mat. Just keep changing that foot position around. I've always got my heel or the inside of my ankle touching the mat or the floor at all times with this exercise, helping to keep that tightness out of the arch of my foot. And as I mentioned, pretzel stretches. One of the pretzel stretches that's quite nice to do once you have just done an exercise such as pure clams, where you're changing that foot position around, changing the angle, is your pretzel stretch where you do the similar thing. You just drop the knee inwards, peeling the hip off the floor. This knee, it might rock out a little bit to the side, but stays relatively vertical. And there you go, it's just dropped out to the side there. But it's all about, again, you can change that angle. You can walk that foot out a little bit further, drop the knee in. And some people will find they get this, a really good stretch with this one, but only on one side. It doesn't seem to work as well on the other side. And that's not unusual to find that with many stretches. So find the one that works for you. I'm just going to go to the other side now. And if you're finding some sore spots, spend a little bit more time doing your pretzel stretches before you join us for the next exercise, which from memory is the up, up, down, down. But I'm just going to double check on that. It is indeed. And we're just using it for awareness today before we move into our single leg stretch. So for our up, up, down, down, as per usual, we'll find our neutral pelvis. You can always go into the butterfly position to find that. But most of you are going to be very, very good at being able to be aware of how it just feels at the back of the pelvis and the hips. Here it feels like I'm flattening my lower back. Here it feels like I'm rolling onto my tailbone. So you'll just know very, very quickly, yep, that's neutral. Love handles are relaxed. Six-pack muscles are relaxed. Corset muscles are engaged. As I float one leg to coffee table, then I'll bring the second leg up, engaging the love handles. And then I'll switch them off once I return that foot to the floor. Same breathing pattern we did earlier when we went from all fours swimming into the Sphinx position. So we did a few swimming variations today. We did the all fours swimming, we did the all fours swimming into the Sphinx, we did our prone swimming, and then, I almost forgot it, but we did our Supermans. Just using this for awareness, keeping the body still, not doming the tummy, not being uncomfortable through the lumbar spine, being relaxed through your shoulders and arms. Sometimes you'll start with the right leg, sometimes you'll start with the other leg. One more of those. Single leg stretch, and today I really want to focus on slowness of movement, so try not to do this too fast. And as a result of doing it slower, you might find that you can't straighten the leg out as far as usual. That's fine, you'll still get an excellent workout. It's just slightly different. Breathing out nice and slow today. So there you go, I didn't straighten it all the way out. Breathe in as you come back. The more you straighten it out, the harder it is. The slower, of course, as I just mentioned, is harder as well. And lower is also harder. So if you're doing it slow, low, and stretching it all the way out, it's pretty tough. And you might, like myself, just start off slow with small movements. And as you go, yeah, I'm feeling pretty good, you can make it a little bit harder. You can progress the exercise. And if you find it's a bit too hard, regress it, make it a bit easier. When you're ready for a rest, hands will go on your knees and you'll enjoy a lovely little round-the-clock stretch, just rolling around on your sacrum and between one side of your pelvis and the other. Across that lower back. Just going to change directions. Take my time today as well with my round-the-clock stretch before I go back and do a little bit more of my single leg stretch. Now, one thing I didn't mention about making it harder is I could have had the other leg at a slightly further away coffee table. Yeah. I'm not going to worry about that one today, but you might. So I just want you to focus on that slowness of movement. Lower is harder, Listen to your body. Always listening to your body. And again, a little round the clock stretch. We're going to do shoulder bridge rolls next. And more often than not, I'll start with the smaller movement, with the shoulder bridge roll, just focusing on that, just that little lumbar region. I'm still initiating through my bottom muscles and my hamstrings and getting that feeling on pushing those feet away from my floor, stretching the mat between my heels and my buttocks. So I'm just focusing on a couple of things right now. One of them is, as I said, the lower back area, the initiation, and the other one is that balance between the left and the right. I don't want to feel my weight shifting between left and right. I find my hands on my thighs makes that easier for me to be aware of. Doesn't work for everybody though. Squeeze through those bottom muscles. You can hold your bridge. Breathe in, double arm drop. Breathing out, rolling back down. And then bring the arms the rest of the way back down on the in-breath. Smooth flowing movement. It's one of the principles of Pilates. So just a couple more of your shoulder bridge rolls. I'm just going to have a little drink of water. And then we'll move into a little bit of our spinal rotations. So, staying on our back, dropping your knees to the left, rolling your head to the right, just rocking onto the outside of those feet, the outside of one foot, the inside of the other one, and slowly switching. You'll also notice tightness or stiffness through the side of your waist, for instance. So this can be really nice to use after you've done hip work. We've got one more hip exercise coming up in the class. So another way you can increase that stretch is doing what I'm doing now. Chest release should be the next exercise. If my memory serves me right, it is indeed. So some lovely mobility exercises with our chest release and swan dive right now. Notice how I'm lying on my shoulder here. I'm not lying on my shoulder like this. So don't have that shoulder right under your ear. Try to have your shoulders relatively stacked. Length through your spine. Take a breath in and take a breath out. I'd normally guide my head for the first couple of these and really focus on what's happening with my rib cage. So if you are doing that, well done. You might stop and hold the stretch. I might support my head if I hold it. And I might even add some rotations of my upper arm, my humerus bone. So generally if I'm holding, I will make sure I'm supporting my head somewhat. If you don't want to use your arm, let it rest into the floor. You'll probably lose your alignment ever so slightly, but it's better than putting too much strain through those neck muscles. Just listening to your body, because you're going to be comparing this side to the other side very soon after our swan dive. And so things to be aware of is tightness, stiffness across this area, where you feel the tightness and stiffness, and how much rotation you've got of your rib cage, your thorax. Swan dive is our next exercise before we swap sides. So lying face down, drawing the belly button away from the floor. I still want you to think of doing that all through the exercise, by the way. I've got my arms in the arrow position. You might be in the push-up or the cactus position. Extend through the neck, slide my fingers down towards my knees as I extend through the rib cage, and then I'm going to return to the mat. I'm going to do several of the smaller movements before I add the lumbar extension as well. It's not a particularly large movement. On my next one, I'm going to add not just lumbar extension through the lower back, but also hip extension through my legs, and I'll add external rotation through my arms. Peeling back through my neck, I'm starting to externally rotate my arms as I work through my thoracic, into my lumbar spine, and into my hip extensors. I then unwind the arms back as I return to the floor. With my breathing, I'm breathing out as I extend back. And I'm breathing in as I return back to the floor. Another option is holding it for the in-breath and coming back on the out-breath as well. I'm going to have a lovely little child's pose next. Remember, we've got the wide knee child's pose, which will open up your inner thighs a lot more, allow you to sit a lot deeper into your hips, and give you a lovely stretch through those inner thigh muscles. You could also do the diagonal as well. I'm going to change sides and move into my chest release on the other side now. I didn't guide the head on the first side, but I'm going to demonstrate it at least on this side. Breathing in, breathing out, just focusing on that rib cage and keeping my head and neck alignment. I'm going to now go to the straight arm. Breathing in, breathing out. Breathing in and breathing out. When we finish this one, we're going to roll back onto our back. We're going to do scissors, and that's a tough variation of scissors that we're doing today. It's the up, up, down, down variation of scissors. We're going to start with a really small movement before we maybe progress it. Completely up to you. So, lying on our back, you know how to do the up, up, down, down. Well, let's do the first part of that just to get into our scissors position. Now, it's like up, up, down, downs, but we start from here and we don't rest on the floor. That's the difference. We come down to an imaginary step, which might only be there. Then we do the other leg. Take a breath in. Then we breathe out. Breathe out. Same breathing pattern as usual. Breathing out. And out. Breathing in. And then you breathe out as you move the legs back up. So the legs move on the out breath. You're still on the in breath. I'm going to go a little bit closer to the floor. Every centimetre closer to the floor will make this exercise significantly harder. If you're coming down to an imaginary step that's just off your mat, you'll really notice this. And just like our normal up, up, down, down, if you had slightly further away coffee table and also if you had straighter legs, it's harder again. That's quite tough. I'm going to start with the other leg first. No tilting of my pelvis. No doming of my tummy. And listening to my body. If it starts to get a bit uncomfortable in the lower back, it's time to rest first and then regress second. Regress meaning, of course, make it easier. So let's just play around with this exercise. Doing those harder variations, you might only be able to do a couple of those. If you were doing this with very straight legs and coming quite close to the mat, that's really tough. So I'm finding it's really tough, so most people will. So listen to your body. I might just hug those knees up this time. Oh, that feels nice. It's like an upside down child's pose stretch. And when I do return the feet to the floor, always one at a time, I'm going to do my pelvic clocks. Just rolling around nice and slowly, like my round the clock stretch, but better. It's bigger and better. So I've done a few in one direction, I've changed directions, I'm going to go back and do each direction one more time. I normally do at least 2 to 3 circles in each direction. So that was the up, up, down, down version of scissors. We're going to stay on our back. We are going to do our shoulder bridge lifts, and some of you might move into the leg pull supine. I'll demonstrate it, but I don't expect everybody to do it. Normally I'd find in a class, maybe less than half the people would actually do the leg pull supine. That's fine. Working through bottom muscles, I'm going to pivot on the top of my shoulder blades as I just lift up. So I'm just doing the lifts at the moment. I could be doing this one-legged. Generally I would start in the ski slope position and then I would come down. You don't have to come all the way down the floor. You might be just doing a small little movement like that. I'm still working really hard through that bottom muscle. I'd probably swap, or I might have a rest and then swap. So I'm just doing the smaller movement here, working through gluteus maximus. And when you're ready to rest, just have a rest on the floor, and you can do any of those movements that help you feel comfortable, such as your spinal rotation, or your pelvic clocks, or maybe your sacroiliac joint mobility. For those who want to do the leg pull supine, then this is the one where we're in a seated position. Again, we can be on our fists. In fact, I do this on my fists, but we're going to have the fingers either forward or 45 forward. If you do want to, you can have them pointing backwards like that, but make sure you keep those elbows soft. Don't lock the elbows out. That's locked out like that. That's a little bit soft. All right, so on my knuckles, fingers about 45 degrees for me. I'm going to roll my shoulders up, back and down. I'm proud across the front of my shoulders and chest. And I'm doing that same sort of movement. This can also be done with one foot off the floor with a leg extension as well. I can do this with very bent legs. Torso staying pretty much in a straight line. I can do this with completely straight legs, but softness at my knees. And obviously, if you're still doing your shoulder bridge lifts, you have the option of holding your ski slope and just doing your normal kicks, bicycle leg swings, any of the variations you know and hopefully love. We are going to stay on our back. We've got one more stability exercise called knee drops before we do a little sequence to finish off our class. Knee drops. I drop the knee out to the side without dropping the pelvis out. So the pelvis stays still. Breathe out as you drop out. Breathe in as you drop in. If in doubt, just keep breathing. Tune into what you can feel across the back of your pelvis especially. Note whether you are rolling left to right. Tune into what you can feel through your hands if your hands are checking like mine are. Your other knee stays still as you drop this one out. So just one more on the other side. And then we've got a couple of exercises on our side. I'm going to be on my right hand side for these. A lovely stability exercise, very similar to that one, in which case we're trying not to lose the marble off our plate, and then we'll finish off on the other side. So starting off with our side kick, that absolutely brilliant exercise for getting into these little small stability muscles of your lower back, and legs are forward of the body, palm to the ceiling, and as little weight as possible through this hand in front. So if need be, you might continue to keep this hand on the floor. If you're doing so, try to make sure the shoulders stay stacked. You're not rolling the shoulder backwards. And we're going to add that little kick forward. So your hand might be touching the floor for a little bit of fingertip control. It might be on the side of your thigh like I generally have mine. Or you might have the lightning rod, which is just another way for you to be aware if you're keeping your shoulders still. I'm going to relax down. You are working through these inner thigh muscles of the leg close to the floor. We might have to do some adductor lifts next class. Again, I'll float the legs off the floor. I almost always will have this hand on the floor when I do the leg float up. And this can be done with just the top leg floating up. Much easier stability-wise, but you'll still get an excellent workout through those lumbar multifidus muscles. Just a couple more of these. And we're going to do our killer rotations. And for this one, I'm going to bend the leg that's on the floor. In fact, I'll bend both legs, make sure I've got my lovely alignment. And I'll straighten out the leg, internal rotation, several toe taps. Trying to keep my torso still so I can lift that leg up as high as I can, maybe. And then I come back to the floor. If you take it any higher and the hips start to move and you'll start to do something like this, where you're flattening out the side of your waist and shortening through here, then you've taken it a little bit too far. Some people can take that leg up to vertical. They're generally gymnasts and dancers. I'm going to go to external rotation now. Flexibility is extremely joint specific. So you might be extremely flexible through your hips, but not through your shoulders, for instance, or vice versa. I'm going to now go toe to heel and continue. There we go, just a little short set, not a big one today, of our killer rotations. We'll do the other side shortly. I'm just going to do my one leg circles, always just one leg at coffee table when we do our one leg circles. I'm going to focus on the small circles today, keeping my marble on my plate, floating up, in this case my right leg, and I'm going to circle this knee. I can even use my hand to guide it, it's a bit easier I find. Breathing out as I go out, breathing in as I come back in. No change in my pelvic alignment, no tipping of water out the front or the back of my bowl, no rolling of my hips left to right and losing my marble. You might be able to make that circle a little bit bigger, still keeping your hips nice and still. And if you make them too big, the hips will roll and you'll just make it a bit smaller again. So I'm changing directions a couple of times actually here. I've done a few in one direction, I changed directions, and I'm going back and doing that again. So a bit like our pelvic clocks. And last direction for me. So I did several in one direction, I switched, then I switched again, and then I finally finished it off. I'm going to return that foot to the floor and swap to the left leg. So I'll circle a few times in one direction. Nice and controlled, make that circle nice and smooth. And I'm going to change and do the second direction. If you're finding you're getting a little bit of clicking and clacking happening at the hips, as long as it's not painful, don't worry about it. I'm going to go back and do that first direction again. A few times, a few circles. And finally, the second direction for the second time. So just a slightly different way of doing our circles today. It's more about stability when we do the smaller circles. And we need to roll over onto our other side and finish off our side kick and our killer rotations. I'm just going to have my last little drink of water. So I need to hop onto my left-hand side and get my alignment first and foremost. Hips are stacked, shoulders are stacked, length through my spine. Float the legs off the floor. If you lose your alignment as you bring the legs up, just go back and start again. And add that kick just till you get that feeling of instability. We generally do this slowly. There are other variations we could have been doing with our one, or our side kick, should I say, and that is the little circles and the gluteal lift variations. No point doing the gluteal lifts when we're going to do killer rotations straight afterwards, unless you really want to work those hips, those gluteal muscles extraordinarily hard today. Again, I'm going to have a little bit of a breather, like I did on the other side. And again, I'm going to just check on my alignment, float those legs up, and just do a few more repetitions. And I'm going to relax, bend my legs to about 90 degrees, get my alignment, internal rotation, and it's toe tap time. I generally support my head when I'm doing this, but occasionally I might take the hand away and let the neck muscles do some of that work. You will notice, of course, like the other side, I am doing the work with the arm as well. I'm going to go into heel taps now. And you'll probably notice I'm not actually reaching the floor with the heel. And that means I can keep my alignment of my torso. And toe to heel. Internal rotation to external rotation. Doing the same thing with my arm. Inward rotation, outward rotation. Medial rotation, lateral rotation. Just different terms meaning the same thing. And one more of those. And pretzel stretches. And that is the end of today's class, once you have done your pretzel stretches. Of course, you might want to then do your relaxation. And then come up to standing and do some one-legged standing. And of course, you can just go to the technique video for that and enjoy that as the end of your class today. Oh, that feels really nice getting into those deep lateral rotators, which got a little bit of an extra workout today because of the pure clams. I'm hoping you're all familiar with your pretzel stretches by now. I'm drawing this ankle in and pushing the knee away. Right now, getting into the gluteals. Now I'm going to, oh, that's beautiful. Get into the deep lateral rotators by pulling that knee across towards the opposite side of the body. I can change that angle around. That's a little bit more, what's lower. That's more towards my shoulder. That's more towards my ear. Just feel a slightly different stretch and tightness depending on which angle I choose. So that is the end of today's class. I hope you enjoyed it. I should be back again next week with another class. Until then, stay well.